So, Mr. Levon, thank you for meeting with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no problem. This is an awesome project. All right, so this interview is about your father, obviously at Auschwitz and during World War II and concentration camps. So basically, to start from the beginning.
Okay.
So where was your father located before World War II started?
He grew up in Warsaw, and he got in the military there, and he ended up being a patrol, a safety patrol they call it, but it was like a border patrol, like down here, like they patrol Mexico and the States. It's the same thing there. They patrol Poland and the next country that was right on the border from them. And they happened to be the first country, obviously, that was invaded by Germany. So he was captured along with everybody in the military. Once captured, they had built those concentration camps, and they used him as a worker because he was not Jewish, so they used non-Jews as workers. Yeah, to do all the work, all the stuff that they needed to do, whether something as simple as cleaning latrines, to doing beds, to keeping the place clean, to as gruesome a task as shoveling bones out of the crematory places. Where they threw different people in there, and they took the bones and literally put them in the trains.
So that's what your dad did?
That's what my dad did, yeah. I mean, he was in there for a good 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And since Poland was the first to be taken over, he was there from day one?
From day one, all the way through.
To the end.
Till the end. And the way he kind of survived on willpower, obviously. There were a couple times when they thought he was dead. One of them was where he tried to escape. And he was trying to run on a train and catch up to the train. The train was moving. He got caught between the cars. And so they kind of brought him back in, and they thought they just left him for dead. And so he was 2 or 3 months. People were helping him, giving him food, and then keeping him alive, but the Germans thought he was basically dead. So he just survived that on their own. A different time, the same kind of thing happened to him. I'm not sure he got hurt again, and then he had to have some surgery because of that, and they took out part of his stomach, and then later on, like maybe 15 years later, they actually reconstructed his stomach, and he went through some major surgery to have that healed up and go
survive from there.
To survive from there, yeah.
So do you know how old your dad was when he was taken, I guess?
Probably in his 20s, somewhere in there, somewhere 23, 27, he was right in that area. And then after the war, actually the way he got away was almost like you just see in the movies. They basically lined everybody up. I don't know, there were about a couple hundred, maybe 300 of them.
So of all the survivors?
All the survivors, well, not all of them, but they just lined them all up. Whoever was left, the Americans were basically knocking on the door. And they knew they were within an hour or two of the camp, and they just lined them up. They pointed them right towards the forest and said, guys, start running, or women, whoever was there, and start running. If you make it, go do it. If you don't, we're basically going to shoot you down. And he was one of the lucky ones that got through to the forest and got away from them.
So do you know where he went from there?
I don't know exactly what happened. I know he lost his entire house. His family was basically dead except for his mother.
Were they all taken?
No, his father actually died many years before. He was a race car driver, and he died in an accident, in race car driving and stuff. So, but he lost his farm. They lost all their belongings. He lost everything. After the war, him and some buddies went to Spain, and they went to school there, and they became electrical engineers. And those are the people that work for, like Sergeant Alani is a big company around here, and they do all kinds of operate. Like one of the projects they did in nuclear power plants, he did electricity for them, and he had to go like a couple times to Jakarta, do some big projects like that. But anyway, so his friends went over there to study, and he met my mom in Barcelona. And actually, that's where I was born there. So that was back in early 50s. I can't remember exactly. I was born in 56, so probably early 50s. And then I was born there, and then they moved to Spain, and I stayed back with my family there. I was raised basically by
your
grandparents. Yeah.
So they just went to America and they left you for your grandparents?
They came back, yeah. So they came back to the States so he could start working and set up here. And so after a few years, I came back to the States, and we lived in Chicago.
Oh, because that's like Polish town.
Yeah, I guess it's the second largest behind Warsaw, in the world as far as Polish people. So we lived here. We've always lived in the Chicago area. Bounced around in Chicago. We stayed in Chicago. So he's all of his friends were here. he went forward from there. A couple times during his stay here, he had to go back and testify for what he went through in Auschwitz.
So do you know anything about that?
I don't know a whole lot about that. You know, a couple times. Yeah, I know he had a number marked on his arm, and I kind of questioned. My dad was very introverted that way. He was a very gregarious guy, but as far as that part of his life, he would not talk to his family at all.
Cut it
Period.
off.
The end. I'm sure he talked to my mom. My mom didn't say a whole lot.
To you.
But now if I ask her a little bit, she'll tell me bits and pieces of it, but not a whole lot more than I'm telling you. I mean, nothing. And this stuff that I have now, I have from his friends from a long time ago. So I'm kind of just trying to remember.
Were you ever like really curious as a kid and be like, what did you?
You know what? Once he kind of turned it off, you know, I have kind of his personality also, and so I you just knew that he didn't want to talk about it to us. So I kind of left it alone. I've never been curious about going to Auschwitz. My wife went back there with my mom, in fact, last summer, and so they were very curious about that.
To go and see.
Yeah, I've really never have been. I've never have wanted to deal with whatever that is. I just, I just took it out for face value for what he told me.
Because I know like a lot of Holocaust like victims or survivors, I would say, are suffer like trauma like later in life because they like think about it and they go a little like berserk. But that never happened.
Never happened to us. I mean, he never let it out to us. You know, and his friends said he never. You know, he went back, like I said, to testify a couple times. Maybe that helped him get through it. I don't know exactly how he dealt with it. You know, he was never.
He just kept it inside.
He was never over the edge mentally, or you know, he never abused any substance or anything. So you couldn't. You know, he worked his butt off. I mean, he was always gone. He worked from 6 to 10 at night, you know, all the time, 7 days a week, or 6 days a week. And it seemed to us he shut it out. I'm sure he dealt with it in some way, in some fashion, but he never let on at all about what happened to him over there. I don't think he just didn't want to burden us with it. I don't think he felt. I'm sure he didn't feel good about that part of his life. He just wanted to
get away from it.
Just leave it there because he basically lost everything but his mother. I mean, he literally lost everything. You know, and even his country, because he left this country.
Yeah, Poland.
And he never went back. You know, my grandmother actually went. She was from France, and she actually went back to live in France. And so we went back to visit her a couple times. But that was it. That was the extent of him even thinking about that at all to us.
That's so like mind-boggling. Because I'm so used to hearing these stories of just about like survivors, and they're like, oh my gosh, they have trauma later on.
Exactly. So he handled it really well. Internally, you know, I'm sure he had nightmares, you know, but he never, ever let on about that stuff. Ever.
Wow.
You know, he was just a really good guy to us that way, and he provided as well as he could for us. But his way of providing was more working and making sure we were okay and that kind of thing.
Make sure like
that we were fine and we had a good life, and you know, so we could move forward and take responsibility for what we wanted to do with our lives, rather than, and probably in his mind, he didn't want to burden us from all that kind of stuff. You know.
Well, rewinding just a little bit, since you're an immigrant.
Yes.
And so, when did you go back to live with your parents in America?
I was probably about 6, 7.
6, 7.
Yeah, because I still remember being in Spain actually when Kennedy got shot. So one of the memories I have before I came back to the States was I got this box, and it was right when JFK got killed or assassinated. And so we opened the box up. My grandfather gives it to me and says, "Hey, you have to live this for a few days here because your president got shot." So that's the last thing I kind of remember. And so then I came to the States for a couple of years. I think we went back. I was about 8 or so. We went back actually to Palma de Mallorca. You might know it better as where Nadal lives. But anyway, that's where we lived there for about a year and a half. We owned some kind of store or something. But that didn't work out well. So then we came back to the States again. And then he
lived all over the place.
Well, in those two, mainly those two countries. And then we came back here. My dad worked for Sergeant Columbia, and we traveled around and worked on their power plants and that kind of stuff. Like basically electrical engineering, which is just doing a lot of drawings and that kind of thing for big companies.
So I know you're, sorry this is a little off, but, so I know your family changed your name.
Yeah.
Because, was that anything related to?
No, it's my grandmother's name, and my father's mother's name. And so we changed it, I was in college.
So
it used to be Paskowski.
Paskowski.
Yeah, his name was actually, it's pronounced Jan, Jan, which is John in Polish. So his name is Jan Paskowski. You know, so mine was actually Juan Paskowski from Spain.
Oh, so it kind of had like all these little interpretations.
Yeah. So he kept that name, and then when I was think it was a sophomore in college, and we changed it. My grandmother passed away, and we changed it to her name. And so the whole family changed it to Levant.
Wow. So it's just
So
like,
it was that
just
simple.
like that.
It's not, yeah.
Was there anything to do?
We're not that complicated. It was just one of those decisions that we made as a family, and there you go.
There it is.
Yeah, so there's not a huge story to that,
Yeah.
to that part of it. Yeah, but it's been interesting. It's been interesting.
Well, that's all the questions I have today.
Okay.
So thank you so much for meeting with me.
Well, I
for the last
appreciate you
meeting.
doing this. I mean, I'm glad for his memory and that people can share in that story.
Yeah,
So,
especially an amazing story as yours,
Yeah.
or your father's,
father's,
but passed down to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So,
wish you would have told me
wow.
a little bit more about it, but, at least
You got bits and pieces.
I did, enough to know what happened to